just joined the live stream. It's about a minute to go before we start. You can probably guess from the picture behind, this is all to do with broadcasting. I'll do a bit more of an explanation as to why I'm here. If you were expecting Craig, then Craig will be here next week. But we're going to go live in about 30 seconds time. And I've got some stories to tell you and also to explain why I'm dressed up for this, where so many people have been more casual, shall we say. So for the moment, take a deep breath, because we're going to go live. We do 3 deep breaths. That's the way broadcasters calm and control their nerves. It's 2 o'clock. It's a Wednesday afternoon. It's the 3rd of June, and my name is not Craig Marsh. In fact, I'm Andrew David. Craig was due to do this week's Lincoln Live, but because of technical problems, and that's something that's always dogged my life in broadcasting, he's not able to be with you. He is guaranteed that he'll be with you next week doing all his wonderful things about do followers make good leaders. So who am I and what am I doing? Well, my name is Andrew David. A bit of a, I suppose, a caveat. Almost everybody you've had has come out of university at some point in this wonderful series, either our colleagues here at the University of Lincoln or other friends that we've had who've given up their time on a Wednesday to be with you to share their thoughts and feelings and their research. I do not come out of any university background. In fact, I may have some young colleagues of mine joining me from my old alma mater. My school that I went to is King's School, Rochester. And in 1972, I left school with 7 of what we called O-levels in those days, GCSEs, and 2.5 A-levels. Got English and history as full A-levels, and French oral. I failed the written bit. And then I went into the BBC, into the British Broadcasting Corporation, which explains why I'm dressed as I am. I'm actually, let me tip the screen down, wearing what Lord Reith, as he eventually became the first Director General of the BBC. Before that, he was Managing Director of the BBC, which was the British Broadcasting Corporation. That was 1922. About 1927, I think it was, or 28, it became the corporation. And he said to his radio broadcasters in those days, especially the announcers, that you would wear full DJ. So I thought, even though we're working from home, I would wear DJ just to make me feel as though I'm doing the right thing. The sign behind me, that was a birthday present from my wife. It's metal, actually. It doesn't light up and it stays on. So it'll stay on all the way through our time together today. But what I'm going to do to start with is to take you on a little bit of a history lesson with the way radio has developed, particularly because my talk is all about broadcasting, the future of broadcasting, and particularly if you're thinking of either going into a university course related to broadcasting, or maybe you're coming to the end of your university course and you wonder what the future is going to be. I think it's, and I have to say that almost everything I'm going to say, the caveat is these are my personal opinions, not necessarily those of the University of Lincoln or indeed Siren Radio, the radio station that I run at the University of Lincoln. But what I want to do is to take you on a little history tour to show you just how broadcasting has changed and developed and moved on. By the way, if you want to send me any questions, please do. I've got a screen up in front of me and I'll do my level best to get through them. So let's take you back a very, very long way. I got into broadcasting in 1972, and in those days, well, in fact, before then, we used these things. This is actually a 78. It's a sort of hard LP type thing, and they used to run at 78 revs per minute. And in broadcasting days, not actually when I joined in 72, but not long before that, that's the way they broadcast music and indeed speech. We then ended up with things like this. It's a 7-inch single that had one track on one side and another track on the other side. And it also had the bigger cousin, which was the LP, which maybe had 8 to 10 to a dozen tracks on either side. And you use the sort of needle and you put it on, and that's the way we heard things. Back in those days, I couldn't have done anything I'm doing at the moment in the same way I did it. I do it now because all the audio was recorded on something like that. This is a 5-inch spool of magnetic tape. and we used to edit it using razor blades, single-sided razor blades, and a thing called a chinograph, which is like a crayon. We moved on to exciting things like cassettes. This is all ancient history, I'm sure, to many people. And then in television, do you remember VHS? Yes, because there was a battle between VHS and beta. Interestingly, domestic market went for VHS. The professionals went for beta. And these are all things from my career, because I went from BBC Radio to BBC Television. Now, this is it. And that's a picture of my father actually on my screen. This is a quite remarkable opportunity for us to do everything we did with LPs, CDs, cassettes, cartridges, VHS, and all the rest of it in one device. And I am now running the radio station, Siren Radio, which was the first community radio station based at a university anywhere in the UK, a full-time one. I'm now, having had beautiful studios at the university, which we're hoping to get back into later on this year, I'm now running this from the laptop I'm talking to you on and a very small studio over there. So excuse wobbly camera work, but over there in the corner on my dining room table is a mixer. And next to me here is my pride and joy. It's a lovely professional microphone, a Rode microphone. And I actually don't have to leave the house because everything is done online. And everything that I used to have to do in the studios, I now do remotely, accessing the playout system, which runs, touch wood, I haven't got any to hand, yes I have, which runs remotely at the moment. And in the 9-10 weeks we've been running it from my dining room table, it's only fallen over twice, mostly because of my incompetence. I forgot to click a particular button. Only a couple of power outages, and that's all that's upset us. We are broadcasting on FM, that's the radio transmitter that Ofcom have given us a license for, 107.3. We're also online, sirenonline.co.uk, and we now do podcasts, which are sirenradio.podbean.com, and we also are streaming live. We have a stream service from our website. We're also on TuneIn. So if you shout at Alexa, and I'm not going to because she's in the corner and she'll wake up in a minute, or Google, they should be able to find us. Yes, in fact, she's just gone bibbly bop. So if you're looking at a career in broadcasting and you're approaching it at the moment, you think, well, I'm at my A levels, I'm doing whatever equivalent qualifications. What should I do next? If I'd been giving this talk a year ago, it would be very simple. Here's the course that's offered at the University of Lincoln, and there are two specific areas of broadcasting that you could go into. That's the journalism side or media production. Fantastic facilities at the University of Lincoln, both for journalism and media. I could go through them, but I'm not going to, because I think what we're actually talking about now is what do you want to do and how do you want to get there, from whether you're leaving sixth form now, or indeed, and I'm also talking to my friends and colleagues who are facing graduation in not quite the way that they were thinking about graduation. It was my great privilege and honor every year in September to be the warm-up person for the graduation from the University of Lincoln, which would take place at the cathedral. Hopefully, we'll be able to do something, but obviously not until everything has settled down. So the courses that have been offered here at the University of Lincoln, and I have to say, and let's face it, there are other institutions, and you may be listening from around the country or indeed around Europe and maybe further afield. It's a matter of finding the one that you think would suit your greatest needs. Now, one of the things about a broadcasting degree is that it's actually as much practical, probably, as it is theoretical. We teach all the necessary things about law, about how councils work, about all that sort of thing. That's the sort of classroom stuff. But we also teach you how to use video cameras. We also teach you how to use audio recorders. And we spend a lot of time, particularly in journalism, making sure that you're legal, decent and honest. You're not going to get your bosses into any trouble. And we also make sure you know how to get the best out of your equipment. So we will use industry standard professional equipment. And that's the case for many of the accredited degrees that you might have read about if you've been looking about where you want to go to. University of Lincoln one of the most long-standing broadcast degrees that you can get. It's been here for well over 20 years. And the journalism degree is accredited by the organizations that many employers, one of which could be me running the community radio station, would be interested in. Does your course conform to BJTC, Broadcast Journalism Training Council, or the NCTJ, the National Council for Training Journalists? And indeed, the university course at Lincoln does that, as do many others. I think the biggest challenge for anybody now thinking, what should I do? Should I go to university? Should I go to a university and get a broadcast degree? Is, have you an idea of what your end fixed point would be? And of course, the thing you should have done is, Andrew, turn it to mute. No idea who that is. Somebody in London probably offering me an opportunity to broadcast live on television. No, it doesn't have like, well, sometimes sounds like that. But where do you want to go? In the old days, we would offer all sorts of opportunities to do work experience, probably at local broadcasting or journalism or media outlets in Lincoln or the East Midlands. And there you make contacts which could probably help you with your career. I think now there's going to be a sea change. I would recommend you still go for a degree. You can still go for a degree in an allied subject. You don't have to go for a broadcasting degree, because when I look at what it is you've studied, I know that when you've been through the academic rigor, you'll be trained to think in a particular way. You'll know how to access research material. So if I ask you to go and research a story, even if you've done a geography, a history, an English, or a science degree, you'll know how to go and do that. The broadcast degree does add all of the physicality of all the equipment and things like that. That's excellent. But what I'm looking for first and foremost is what happens in here. And what I want is passion. I want passion to do whatever it is you feel you can offer that particular organization. And the passion is something which is exciting. It's electric and inside. We can do the training. We can retrain you to use the playout systems. We can retrain you to use our broadcast systems and our equipment. But it's what happens inside. And that's one of the things which I think a good quality university degree, such as you can get here at Lincoln, really does set you up for a good start. We're also looking for things called transferable skills. And this is going to sound really daft. Many of my young friends and colleagues who work on Siren use this thing for all sorts of things, social media stuff, of course. Very seldom do they use it for the purpose that the original mobile phone was used for, which was making phone calls. You know, you dial and then you speak to people. We actually have had in the past to train people how to answer the phone and how to use the phone as a communication device. And you're probably laughing wherever you're watching this, but we do run courses on how to answer the telephone. One of the things we have in our newsrooms are phones that are actually attached to a piece of wire. As they were in my day in the BBC, every desk had a wired hardline telephone. Nowadays, if it rings in the newsroom, quite a few of my colleagues look at it thinking, what do I do? And then the second thing they say, well, when you pick it up, just say, just answer it. But how do I answer it? What do I say? So we teach transferable skills such as simply phone answering. And the other thing we teach is how to talk to people. Now, this might sound daft, but it's something which we find is often lacking if we've engaged in a course which has been intensely cerebral, and maybe you've spent a lot of time on your own or in your study bedroom or something like that, just engaged with your books and your computer, but not actually engaging with real people. And this is, I think, one of the big challenges as we look to coming out of lockdown and going back into university life, however it looks, is that actually there's a real need for doing the physical one-to-one, as well as doing the wonderful things we can do on Zoom and Teams and Skype and things like that. So again, what we do is we teach people how to interact, how to ask questions. And here's a top tip: 6 questions. We call them the 6 W's, but in fact, it's 5 W's and an H. How, what, why, where, when, and who. And you can do an interview. I could train any of you to do an interview straight away just using those: how, what, why, where, when, and who. Just a reminder, if you want to interrupt me and send a question, very happy to interact with those. You've just got the little box on the right-hand side of the screen. Transferable skills, the other thing that does is we send you out to go and meet what I call real people. And that helps overcome this natural reticence. And I can honestly say, as an 18-year-old, I would have had difficulty going out to do something called a vox pop. Vox pop are those things where we go out and talk to members of the general public about a particular topic, and you've seen legions of them over the last few weeks and months as we've been in lockdown. And what, of course, nowadays you have to do it at arm's length, 6 meters, no, 2 meters, 6 feet 6. But that, again, helps you overcome the embarrassment of talking to a complete stranger. You're fine when you're in your university group, your seminar group, your lecture group, your whatever, your workshop group, but get outside your comfort zone. And that, in a broadcasting environment, is exactly what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to learn how to talk to real people. It is going to be different, though, because those who are graduating this year and maybe getting jobs or getting into an industry which is quite different to the one we had a couple of weeks ago, you might not be necessarily getting out and talking face-to-face physically, but you may be doing it on Zoom. You may be running interviews, as I'm doing later on this afternoon. I'm going to do an interview with somebody from the St Barnabas Hospice, again, using these sorts of things. Not quite the same as physically going to the shop or going to an office, but the same rules apply. So you've got to get used to being able to talk to complete strangers. And again, that's something we offer in a broadcast-based course and is offered by many other institutions across the United Kingdom. But what's the industry going to look like, the one that you want to get into? We have had to learn in broadcasting how to keep the needles moving in some quite remarkable ways. Siren Radio is part of the community radio network. It's the third tier of broadcasting in the UK. We have a license from an organization called Ofcom. It's the same organization that licenses the BBC and other broadcasters in the UK. We have some very strict rules by which we have to adhere. And it's because we have been given a select frequency on an FM transmitter. When we are online and we stream and all the rest of it, but the magic of being on a radio station, when you open the fader, that's the slider thing I showed you on my little desk over there, and the light goes on, well, it would do if there was a light in it. It's, as I say, it's made out of tin. And the adrenaline kicks in and you're live on air. That is something quite extraordinary, which you don't necessarily get with a podcast, because you can edit a podcast, but the live element is something which is quite extraordinary. I believe, because of the way radio has been able to develop from the 78 all the way through to the mobile phone, I believe radio is going to be a significant area for people to go into as a start in a broadcasting career. The caveat is, you may not find that you're going to go into the big broadcasters. You may not find that the BBC or ITV or IRN or the local commercial radio network has places for you immediately, or indeed for a while. But what you'll be able to do is, using what you've got in a phone like this or any other similar devices, is you can offer radio stations content. At the moment, my radio station, let's look at the time, it's 2:15, is playing a mixture of music, jingles, and pre-recorded interviews. The pre-recorded interviews are what enriches broadcasting. Otherwise, it might just as well be rebroadcasting Spotify or whatever your music system of choice is. The radio bit is when you and I are talking, are communicating. Maybe, as it is at the moment, just a bit one-sided, but it comes alive when I think, I wonder what you're thinking. I wonder what you're feeling. Are you interested in what I'm about to tell you? Let me tell you something that's interesting that's happened to me. A conversation. And that is something which you can help broadcasters like me with by sending me your conversations. Okay, we call them interviews. I think what the sharp, the smart, the savvy of you are going to be able to do is using all the skills we've given you as part of a good quality broadcast degree course, whether it's journalism or media production, that is you'll be able to feed us with information to keep the needles moving, to intersperse within the tracks that we play, the music that keeps you entertained, the stuff which is and has effectively over the last 9 or 10 weeks been a lifeline for a lot of people. Radio connects with people in a way that many other forms don't quite scratch that itch. And a lot of people who've been living on their own rely on the radio in whatever form they receive it as their friend, the person who is there in the room with them. BBC Local Radio, which is where I moved into when I left BBC Radio 2 in 1976, has done extremely well over the last 8 to 10 weeks because it's been there delivering live local content. Siren Radio has done its level best to do that. Based on the fact that we can't get into our studios, we've had to do everything by dropping it into the playout system. So if you're just about to graduate, don't feel that the last few years are now going to amount to nothing because you can't get a job in your favorite broadcast empire and become the next whoever on Radio 1, 2, 3 or 4. No, build your skills by contacting, wherever you are, your local community radio station. There are something like 300 of them. And okay, you might not get paid, but it does give you an opportunity to be able to expand your talent base and to at least, there's something about hearing yourself on the radio. I still air check myself by listening to myself on air. It's not a vanity thing. It's that, I could have done that better, could have edited that perhaps a little bit more smoothly. But actually, yes, that does work. And even now at, dare I say it, 66, I'm still learning tricks. Well, if tricks are the wrong word, I don't think they are. Anyway, I've rambled on for quite a long time. Excuse me whilst I have a drink from my personalized mug. I don't know whether you can see that. The man, the myth, and the legend. I won't tell you who bought that for me, but it wasn't me, I can tell you. As I say, if you want to post a question, I'm very happy for you to fling absolutely anything at me. I can talk about broadcasting. Excuse me. I can talk a little bit about the radio industry. And whilst you're gathering your thoughts, what I can tell you is that, excuse me, the commercial radio network in this country is in an interesting state. There are two big major players, Bauer and Global. And if you've been following what's happened to Links FM, one of the, till recently, largest and single family owned companies of independent commercial radio stations, they've been taken over by Bauer, and Bauer are doing a sort of a reworking of them. Global are the other company who own huge numbers of radio stations, big network ones as well as local ones. You may get jobs there, and there may be journalism people who want to, newsrooms rather, who want to take on new staff, particularly if you're cost effective, shall I put it like that. But they're not going to be recruiting DJs much. There are plenty of them. Excuse me, I've got a tickle again. There are many of radio DJs out there who've been let go. And that's a bit of a challenge. It's a challenge because some of them are my friends. Some of them are very good. And they just happen to be working for an organization that can't offer them any further work. Some stations, once again, I do apologize. Some stations have actually had to go off air temporarily. Fortunately, Siren hasn't. But it is going to be a new environment, and commercial radio maybe will have its challenges. BBC Local Radio also will have some challenges as well. It's a matter, I think, of being patient. So use the time that you've got from graduation until you get a full-time job to work for an organisation such as a community radio station, such as Siren Radio. And I'd be very happy to chat to you off-air, offline. All you need to do is to get in touch with me. Lauren has sent me a message. What is your opinion on the challenges to radio posed by on-demand broadcast series? That's an interesting question, Lauren. And I have to say, I actually see podcasting as a complement to what we do on air. What I'm actually doing at Siren is now offering opportunities for people to come into our studios when eventually they're open and record podcasts, which I then broadcast, because a good podcast is simply a very, very good radio program, properly edited, properly constructed with a beginning, middle, and end, not just an indeterminate ramble. And I think actually radio is benefiting by podcasts and on demand, and I use on demand services because I love Alan Alda. He has a wonderful, Clear and Vivid is the name of his website. Now, I go to him as well as listening to Radio 4 or any other radio output. I find it's part of my portfolio of what I like to listen to when I'm not actually broadcasting or running the radio station. The challenge is actually that there are so many out there. And I think the challenge is not to radio, the challenge is to the podcast industry, particularly if you're trying to make money from a podcast. We don't make money from our podcasts on Siren Radio. They're there to allow people to download and listen again to our programs. By all means, produce podcasts, because again, it's a wonderful way of practicing your radio skills, particularly those that you will have perhaps picked up on a media production degree course. So it's something you could be doing if you haven't actually got a full-time job. Try and find a niche in the market which is not being filled by anything else. And it's as I say, I don't honestly see it necessarily as a major problem. And to be honest, what I tend to do is when I find a good podcast, I contact the people and say, look, have you thought about offering it as a radio output to your nearest radio station? Quite a lot of people in podcasting have never seen that as another opportunity for disseminating whatever it is that they can do. So if you'd like any more questions, I'm very happy to answer them. Paul has sent a question. How did the digital revolution change things in drama production, especially in the move from SD to HD and 4K? Did it change things in terms of how camera assistants learning the craft from how they worked in the past? Paul, when I was in television, I had people doing things for me, which was fantastic. The digital revolution is making a huge, huge difference. Miniaturization in the sense that you can do everything with an Adobe suite, which I could only ever dream of when I was in edit suites in Pebble Mill or in Broadcasting House in London. Again, going back to what I was saying about being smart and being careful about how you sculpt your career, absorb as much as you can about the new technology, and then apply those disciplines to the disciplines that you may have been taught in your production course. I think things are going to change massively. It'll be phenomenal to be able to see how big productions, such as the regular soaps, EastEnders, and the ones I watch, NCIS and LA, Los Angeles NCIS, who've obviously spent years and years producing things. They're now going to have to rework incredibly quickly to come up to speed. So if the camera assistants who learned their craft in the old days by watching more seasoned people do it, because that's the way I learned my broadcasting craft with people like Terry Wogan, if they have learned and assimilated all of those wonderful things that they're taught, I think they are going to be in a much better position to turn the industry around when it gets back on its feet than perhaps old war horses like me. Really good question. Can't do much about the SD to HD to 4K. All I remember is the cameras got smaller and smaller and smaller. And instead of having a camera and a recorder and lights, when I went out with a crew, I tended just to go out with one person. And all I'd end up doing is carrying the legs, which is another way of calling the tripod. So, Paul, thank you very much indeed for your question. But again, all the huge amount of technology which is available to teaching staff now is going to make a huge difference, I think, to their skill base. And I think they're going to be the ones who will excite and energize the industry in a way that old war horses like me may be thinking, crumbs, where did that come from? Nicola, how can students get involved in Siren Radio? Ever so straightforward, you email me. The simplest thing is to email adavid@lincoln.ac.uk, and then I'll take it from there. if you can produce material at home or wherever you are, on whatever mobile device you can lay your hands on, then I can do some of the more extensive editing and topping and tailing. Just to give you an idea, Nicola, we have two of our presenters, Sue and Peter Hayward, who would normally be in the studio presenting their programs on a Friday between 10 and 2. They can't get into the studio. They've not got the technology with them at home. But what they do have is a microphone, which they're recording home-written short stories on. And they send the stories into me. I do fine-tune editing, mix it together with a piece of music. And hey presto, we have original, locally produced, locally written, wonderful, enriching content. And that's very straightforward. So that's how you get involved. First of all, send me an email, tell me who you are, tell me a little bit about yourself, sell yourself, and then tell me what sort of areas you might like to get involved in. Because at the moment, all you can do is to send me stuff that I can then play around with on the laptop I've got. We're not going to be getting back into our studios for quite a while. And I'll explain why. I'm not being churlish about it, and it's not that I don't want to go into work. I have got to be exceptionally careful about how we run the radio station in terms of our physical interaction with the faders, with the mics, with the pop shields and things like that. And we are still working as a team on how best to make it a safe environment for you. So I don't honestly see us getting back into the studio before the beginning of our teaching term at the University of Lincoln, which is the first couple of weeks of October. I think, and we've also got to let Freshers Flu go through as well, haven't we? I think we're going to be hopefully getting back into our studio in November, which is where, if you've been working with me from now onwards, we may have a good head of steam to be able to get you on air and give you not just an opportunity to send your programs in, but actually to sit at that magic mixing console and go live on air. So if there are any more questions, I'm very happy to take them, but that's the half hour that I think is normally allotted to this slot. It's been a rare privilege to be with you, and I've done an awful lot of talking. Sorry about the coughing in the middle. Hay fever has been an absolute pain this year, as I'm sure it may have been for many of you. Once again, if you want to get in contact with me, David, all one word, at lincoln.ac.uk. Sell yourself, tell me what you'd like to do, and I'll see what we can do. We've got plenty of airspace available. If you go to sirenonline.co.uk, you'll find that's where our website is with one of our streams. You can also have a look at the schedule, which shows you the programs that we've got running at the moment. It also gives you an idea of the variety of output that we're still managing to maintain during these challenging times. And can I wish you all the best? If you're graduating this year, good luck. There are opportunities out there, and hopefully I've given you some leaders. If you're thinking of joining in, going to a university near you or coming to the University of Lincoln, you will be welcomed with open arms. There are some fabulous courses. And as I say, you don't necessarily have to do a broadcast course. You can do a straightforward basic undergrad course, which actually trains you in all sorts of wonderful ways, which are incredibly useful to people like me as radio station managers. I'm going to sign off in a minute. I'm going to tell you about next week. Next week, Craig Marsh, Dr. Craig Marsh, will be here with his program. He's looking at followers, as in those who follow on social media. Do they make good leaders? He's done a lot of research in this area. He's from the Lincoln International Business School. I've actually been working with him on producing podcasts. And if you go to sirenradio.podbean.com, you can find some of the programs that we've done with his fabulous team of people. But he's going to be asking the question, do followers make good leaders? That's at 2:00 next week on Lincoln Live, the Facebook page of the University of Lincoln Virtual Classroom. And I'm going to sign off, because I'm wearing a dinner jacket, with an expression by one Edward R. Murrow. Siren Radio has won several Edward R. Murrow Awards for news documentary. He was a broadcaster on television, particularly in the 1950s. He also came and spent time here in Lincolnshire when he reported during the Second World War. He was based not far away from us down the road at Woodhall Spa. And he used to finish his broadcasts with a simple phrase, okay, maybe the wrong time of day for this, but it's heartfelt. Good night and good luck.